On the 13th of October, the National Broadcasting Company was privileged to present one of the great ladies of the American theater, Miss Lynn Fontanne. Miss Fontanne gave an eloquent interpretation of The White Cliffs, a new narrative poem by Alice Duer Miller. Public response to the program was so instantaneous and so great that the National Broadcasting Company presents what is indeed a demand performance of the program. Miss Fontanne, who is currently appearing in Robert Sherwood's moving stage success, There Shall Be No Night, will be introduced to you by her husband, with whom she has co-starred, Mr. Alfred Lunt.
The White Cliffs is a story in verse which has recently been published in book form. Miss Fontanne and I think it is a beautiful and inspiring story, and we are very glad indeed to have this opportunity of again presenting it to the radio audience. It is the story of an American girl who marries an Englishman and sees the English at their best and their worst, at their stodgiest and stuffiest, and at their most heroic. In these dark days, when Britain is fighting for her life, when bombs are dropping on king and cockney alike, it is peculiarly appropriate that Americans should know who are the people of this little island who are standing alone in defiance of all the dictatorships. So now will you please try to imagine that you are listening to the voice of an American woman speaking to you from her home in England, telling you her own story.
I have loved England dearly and deeply since that first morning, shining and pure, the white cliffs of Dover I saw, rising steeply out of the sea that once made her secure. I had no thought then of husband or lover. I was a traveler, the guest of a week. Yet when they pointed the white cliffs of Dover, startled I found there were tears on my cheek. I have loved England, and still as a stranger. Here is my home, and I still am alone. Now in her hour of trial and danger, only the English are really her own. In 1914, early May, London was crowded and rich and gay. A light blue carpet on the stair and tall young footmen everywhere, tall young men with English faces standing rigidly in their places. I went up the stairs between them all, strange and frightened and shy and small, and as I entered the ballroom door, saw something I never had seen before, except in portraits. A stout old guest with a broad blue ribbon across his breast. That blue, as deep as the southern sea, bluer than skies can ever be. The Countess of Salisbury, Edward III, no damn merit, the Duke. I heard my own voice saying, upon my word, the Garter, and clapped my hands like a child. Someone beside me turned and smiled, and looking down at me said, I fancy you're Bertie's Australian cousin Nancy. He told me to tell you that he'd be late at the Foreign Office and not to wait supper for him, but to go with me and try and behave as if I were he. I should have told him on the spot that I had no cousin, that I was not Australian Nancy, that my name was Susan Dunn, and that I came from a small white town on a deep-cut bay in the smallest state in the USA. I meant to tell him, but changed my mind. I needed a friend, and he seemed kind. So I put my gloved hand into his glove, and we danced together and fell in love. Young and in love, how magical the phrase, how magical the fact. Who has not yearned over young lovers when to their amaze they fall in love and find their love returned? We went to the Tower, we went to the zoo, we saw every flower in the gardens at Kew. We saw King Charles a-prancing on his long-tailed horse and thought him more entrancing than better kings, of course. At a strange early hour in St. James's Palace yard, we watched in a shower the changing of the guard. And I said, what a pity when London is a city whose beauties never end. John had one of those English faces that always were and always will be found in the cream of English places till England herself sink into the sea. A blonde, bowed face with prominent eyes, a little bit bluer than English skies. And what a voice he had, gentle, profound, clear, masculine. I melted at the sound. And still I did not see my life was changed, utterly different, by this love estranged for ever and ever from my native land, that I was now of that unhappy band who lose the old and cannot gain the new, however loving and however true to their new duties. I could never be an Englishwoman. There was that in me, Puritan, stubborn, that would not agree to English standards, though I did not see the truth, because I thought them, good or ill, so great a people, and I think so still. The English are frusty when you're no kith or kin of theirs, but how they alter when once they take you in. The kindest, the truest, the best friends ever known. It's hard to remember how they froze you to the bone. They showed me all London, Johnny and his friends. They took me to the country for long weekends. I never was so happy. I never had such fun. I stayed many weeks in England instead of just one. But a day came when I was forced to face facts. I went down to see the family place, John's mother, and the cradle of his race. A red brick manor house in Devon in a beechwood of old grey trees, ivy climbing to the clustered chimneys, rustling in the wet south breeze, gardens trampled down by Cromwell's army, orchards of apple trees and pears, casements that had looked for the Armada, and a ghost on the stairs. Johnny's mother, the Lady Jean, child of a penniless Scottish peer, was handsome, worn, high-coloured, lean, with eyes like Johnny's, more blue and clear, like bubbles of glass in her fine tanned face. And presently she said, as they sooner or later always say, "You're an American, Miss Dunn. Really, you do not speak like one." She seemed to think she'd said a thing both courteous and flattering. I answered, though my wrist were weak with anger, "Not at all, I speak. At least I've always thought this true, as educated people do in any country, even mine." Really? I saw her head incline. I saw her ready to assert, Americans are easily hurt. I saw the house with its oaken stair and the Tudor rose on the newel post, the panelled upper gallery where they told me you heard the family ghost. A gentle, unhappy ghost who sighs outside one's door on the night one dies. I saw the picture of every son, Percy the eldest, and John and Bill in Chinese customs, and the youngest one, Peter the sailor, at Osbonsdill, and the daughter Enid, married, alas, to a civil servant in farmer dress. A little thing happened just before we left. The evening papers came. John, flicking them over to find a score, spoke for the first time a certain name. The name of a town in a distant land, etched on our hearts by a murderer's hand. Mother and son exchanged a glance, a curious glance of strength and dread. I thought, what matter to them if Franz Ferdinand dies? One of them said, "This might be serious." "Yes, you're right," the other answered. "It really might." The English love their country with a love steady and simple, wordless, dignified. I think it sets their patriotism above all others. We Americans have pride, we glory in our country's short romance, we boast of it and love it. But Englishmen will serve day after day, obey the law, and do dull tasks that keep a nation strong. Once I remember how I saw pale, shabby people standing in a long line in the twilight and the misty rain to pay their tax. I then saw England plain. Johnny and I were married. England then had been a week at war, and all the men wore uniform as English people can, unconscious of it. Percy, the best man, as thin as paper and as smart as paint, bade us goodbye with admirable restraint, went from the church to catch his train to hell, and died, saving his batman from a shell. We went down to Devon in a warm summer rain, knowing that our happiness might never come again. I, not forgetting till death us do part, was outrageously happy with death in my heart. Lovers in peacetime with 50 years to live have time to tease and quarrel and question what to give. But lovers in wartime better understand the fullness of living with death close at hand. My father wrote me a letter. My father, scholarly, indolent, strong, teaching Greek better than high school students repay, teaching Greek in the winter, but all summer long sailing a yawl in Narragansett Bay. So, Susan, my dear, the letter began, you've fallen in love with an Englishman. Well, they're a manly, attractive lot if you happen to like them, which I do not. I'm a Yankee through and through, and I don't like them or the things they do. Whenever it's come to a knockdown fight with us, they were wrong and we right. If you don't believe me, cast your mind back over history, and what do you find? They certainly had no justification for that maddening plan to impose taxation without any form of representation. Your man may be all that a man should be, only don't bring him back to me saying he can't get decent tea. He could have got his tea all right in Boston Harbor a certain night when your great-great-grandmother, also a Sioux, shook enough tea from her husband's shoe to supply her house for a week or two. The War of 1812 seems to me about as just as a war could be. How could we help but come to grips with a nation that stopped and searched our ships and took off our seamen for no other reason except that they needed crews that season? I can get angry still at the tale of their letting the Alabama sail and Palmerston being insolent to Lincoln and Seward over the Trent. All very long ago, you'll say, but whenever I go up Boston way, I drive through Concord, that neck of the wood, where once the embattled farmers stood, and I think of Revere and the old North Steeple, and I say, by heck, we're the only people who licked them, not once but twice. Never forget it, that's my advice. They have their points, they're honest and brave, loyal and sure as the grave. They make other nations seem pale and flighty, but they do think England is God Almighty, and you must remind them now and then that other countries breed other men, from all of which you will think me rather unjust. I am your devoted father. I read and saw my home with a sudden yearning, the small white wooden house, the grass-green door, my father's study with the fire burning and books piled on the floor. I saw the dear Scurie, 2 black kittens, stalking relentlessly an empty spool. I saw a little girl in scarlet mittens, trudging through snow to school. I settled down in Devon when Johnny went to France. Such a tame ending to a great romance. 2 lonely women with nothing much to do but to get to know each other. She did, and I did too. Mornings at the rectory, learning how to roll bandages and always saving light and coal. Oh, that house was bitter as winter closed in. In spite of heavy stockings and woolen next the skin, I was cold and wretched, and never unaware of John, more cold and wretched in a trench out there. All that long winter I wanted so much to complain, but my mother-in-law, as far as I could see, felt no such impulse, though she was always in pain, and as the winter fogs grew thick, took to walking with a stick heavily, and not for the blinking of an eye did she ever stop thinking of the suffering of Englishmen and her 2 sons in the trenches. Now and then I could forget for an instant in a book or a letter, but she never forgot either one.